Hello gobs and welcome back to another episode of RPG Horror Stories. Hey, if you're not subscribed, become subscribed today. To become a gob, you get to run around in a goblin cave. Now if you don't know who I am, I'm the Goblin King. I do RPG related stuff obviously. Not only do I do tabletop RPG stuff, but I also do video game RPG stuff. I try to upload a variety of content, so if that interests you, subscribe. Like I said, you get to become a gob and you get to chill in the cave. So, you already know all the spiel, like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, it's RPG Horror Stories. We're going to read some stories from the subreddit. This is just from the RPG Horror subreddit, so if you want to see them, go check it out there. It's RPG Horror Stories. We're reading stuff. Let's just get into today's RPG Horror Stories. Sorry about my voice, I have a bit of something coming down, but I'm going to keep reading. Our first story comes from Graham Apasta. Short and sweet horror story of the struggle of having a forever DM as a player. Before we begin, does any other group have this problem? In our group, instead of having a forever DM where one person's the DM always and no one else wants to DM, we have the opposite. Everybody in my group wants to be a DM. Like, we'll still be players in each other's campaigns, but everyone wants to run a campaign of a different system or same systems. But regardless, everybody in my group wants to be a DM. I just want to know if anybody else has a similar group composition like that. So, whatever. Little gob tidbit. So, let me know in the comments down below. A few years ago, I was in this D&D game via Discord. We were all located in different parts of the country, with a friend, their fiancé, and their brother. The fiancé was a forever DM in their local group of friends, and was happy to put down the mantle for once. To this detail, we'll come back later. We start the game, all goes smoothly except for some sessions being cancelled due to some IRL issues from all parties here and there. We are 2/3 of the story in, been playing it for more than 6 months. In the previous session, a big plot point for my character had been resolved, so I'm happy to see what is gonna happen next. Until a message hits the group chat one afternoon. The fiancé told us he had to step down because he was asked to be the DM for some IRL folks he had met at a LARP event the previous week. Mind you, he had met these people during that weekend while he had been playing our game for almost 6 months. He revealed that he was mastering 2 campaigns already and playing in ours, so quitting this one was the better option. Apparently, this was a problem for the DM too because they didn't feel like continuing the story with a missing player, so he had to pull the plug on the whole thing. I get that D&D comes and goes, and it's far more common for a D&D game to never be finished, but it still rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't help that a few months ago when I went to visit the brother, he lives closer to me compared to them, and was reminiscing about the game, he revealed that he also was so bothered by that decision. Anyway, now the friend has become a full-time streamer, and she's streaming that very same story they did with us with some streamer colleagues. Honestly, I am curious about learning how the story will end, so I hope I will be able to see it through them and see how it ends. Wish them the best. Classic D&D scheduling issues. At least in the first half. The second half was just, well, some people just like IRL games more than doing it over Discord. There's a different feel. I guess you get to use actual dice because most of the time when you do digital TTRPGs, you use websites like Roll20 and other digital tabletops where you roll using the virtual dice instead of actual dice because it's just more fair for everyone and everyone can see the roll, and it's very hard to skew digital results over, just physically rolling off camera and then going, oh, I got an 18. So there's that. Kind of is just a tad bit douchebaggy, not letting the players know that this probably wouldn't be a full commitment. That's one thing. Communication, that's all I always say. The forever DM as the player should have let them know everything up front. Like, hey, I'm playing 2 other games and I'm always looking to DM another IRL game. So this might not be a permanent thing. That way there's not as much as a feel bad whenever he does cut them off. But in the same manner, you are playing in this one, you have been in it for 6 months, so obviously it's not like you dislike it, because if you dislike it, why are you still playing? But I guess there is that commitment to be with friends, but for 6 months, I don't know. People are too afraid to speak up when they're having an uncomfortable time. And 6 months is quite a long time for a commitment to a game, so. And then you just, out of the blue, just drop it over some people that you met at a LARP? Look, I get it. You want that IRL thing, but you should at least let the other players know, or should have let them know about everything that was happening with you way before. And that is about it. Just talk about it. Communication, rule 0, let people know that this might not be a permanent thing or might not be a long commitment, and that's about all you can do. So let's move on to our next story. Our next story comes from Peter E. Ventura, the Coop. So, this story is a major event in my DM career that traumatized me for a long time after and almost made me quit D&D entirely. However, now that I'm in a better place in my life with a much better group of friends, I decided to post it here for your enjoyment. The cast of characters isn't super important beyond the one evil genius I will call Bob. It all started in college in a creative writing class. I didn't have a ton of friends at the time, so I began to grow attached to this group of writers in my creative writing class. We had talked about writing, fiction, and just life in general for literal hours after the class had ended, and once even had to get kicked out of the classroom so the next class could start their lesson and use the room. One day, someone floated the idea of wanting to play D&D, and I mentioned I was a longtime DM looking for a group for a horror campaign I had been writing. So we immediately got together for a session, and it was instant magic. The characters created all had great concepts, the role-playing was great, and everyone really enjoyed the story I had written. It was around this time I began to have a really good friendship with the infamous Bob. He had always had great insights into my writing, so I often asked him for advice regarding my campaign ideas. As this went on, I began to put a lot of trust in it, which he would soon come to abuse. On a particular busy day when I was supposed to have a session, I realized I would have to cancel, but everyone was clamoring to have another session. So I called up Bob, and he suggested he should try his hand tonight at DMing. This was my first mistake. For as time went on, and I resumed my DMing duties, and the campaign continued to the 1-year mark. Everything seemed to be going really well when one day I was talking to some members of the group and found out Bob ran some sessions beyond the initial one-shot without me. I was a little confused and asked Bob why he had excluded me. He told me that he thought I was going to be busy the entire week and the plans were already made, so he didn't bother asking. I brushed this off thinking this was a simple misunderstanding. Then, the week of finals hit and everything went wrong. I was leaving my creative writing class to head over to my English final when Bob told me he needed to talk to me. He pulled me aside and told me, "So I have talked with the group and we have unanimously decided to move on to a different campaign without you. And they asked I talk to you because they don't want to talk to you about it." I was floored. This has been my only friend group most of college, and they were abandoning me. I mumbled some apology, went to my final, and was so upset about everything I fully failed the final. When I got home, I couldn't get any of it through my skull. I must have done something to offend them, said something or done something, but for the life of me I couldn't figure out what I have done. I felt so unbearably guilty, but I didn't even know what I had done to deserve any of it. So I decided I needed to talk to the group, apologize, and lead them like they wanted. On a group chat, I apologized profusely, told them that I respected the decision, and wished everyone the best. Then, the first message came. "What are you talking about? We never said anything about kicking you from the group." Then the rest of the group entered the chat, all stating the same confused sentiment. No one knew they had unanimously decided to kick me from the group and start a new campaign. Everyone except Bob. Absolutely furious, I tried to confront him online, but he denied any involvement, saying he must have confused or that maybe the other players were intimidated by me. I then went and talked to each of my players, and everyone had the same story. Bob had been having sessions without me, and he had never mentioned any of this to anyone. At this point, the semester was over, and the group really never got over this. We were all weirded out by this incident, and people generally stopped talking to each other. The passion to play my campaign went out as well, as none of us could really get past what had happened. A while later, I ran into one of my old friends, and she confirmed that Bob's campaign he had wanted to run never manifested, as everyone pretty much blamed him for everything and thought he was a jerk for doing what he did. So this was some solace, at least. It took me a long while to get over this incident and start trusting people again. But after a bunch of therapy sessions and tentatively running a few one-shots, I started playing D&D again and am a proud DM to this day. I have an awesome group who supports me and is very open about any issues they have, and it's done wonders to build back my self-confidence as a DM and as a person. So I guess the lesson is, if the world seems like it's turned against you, maybe double check to make sure it isn't one guy trying to do something sneaky. And that is wonderful advice. This is more just not even like a D&D, not even a tabletop issue. This is just a person issue. This is just a really crappy person. Screw you, Bob. Don't do that to people. Don't go behind their back and try to manipulate them like that, especially after earning their trust. Just don't be a crappy person. That's about all there is to the advice for this one. Summed it up pretty well. Hey, if there's something wrong, maybe check with some people online, RL, get with them, check and just make sure everything is okay. Even if it's a tabletop issue, make sure you talk to it about people. If something makes you uncomfortable, talk about it. And if someone says something weird, don't put it under the rug. Get with other people, let the DM know, and if they're your friends, they should hear you out. If they don't hear you out or they go against you, maybe they're not your friends. But what do I know? I'm just a little goblin in this crazy cave. Moving on to our final story. Our last story comes from Dr. Gunslinger, DM on Power Trip, hates feedback. This story started from an LFG post on Roll20 for the Blades in the Dark system. The people in the story are as follows. Fake names only. Alvin, the DM and focal point of the horror story. Evan, a fellow player and good guy. Isaac, another fellow player and good guy. Knew Alvin before the game started. Everything in the Blades of Dark game was great. It was us 3 players and one more player that left after 4 sessions. After the extra player left, Alvin suggested we switch to a D&D 5e game that he wants to run, especially since he was more into high fantasy lately and had lots of ideas. Evan had never played 5e but was excited. Me and Isaac have played it a lot, so we were also excited. We took about a month break to give Alvin time to prepare and so we could make characters. After a week, Alvin posted character creation rules and some gameplay rules, as he wanted to make the game more gritty and realistic. This should have been the first sign. Guys, I have a gob rant about realism in TTRPGs. Hopefully I'll put it up here, but I never do because I always forget about it. But go check out that video and learn about my opinions on realism in TTRPGs. Here's a short synopsis. I hate it. I won't elaborate further, go check out that video. Just know realistic rules never tend to turn out realistic and just slow the game and grind it down to a halt, usually. So let's read these realistic and gritty rules. Here are just some of the rules that he had listed for a 5th edition game. Spells now cost GP to cast, 10 GP per spell level. Material components always required and are consumed even if the spell says otherwise. You are limited to a maximum of 3 cantrips even if your class says otherwise. Only one of them can be a damaging cantrip. No booming blade. Resting now costs gold. 1 GP per night if you want to heal 1 hit dice worth, 10 GP per night if you want to heal 1 hit dice per character level. These costs were doubled if you were not in a city or town, which was 80% of the time. Jumping requires an athletics roll with a very complicated formula for calculating DC. Archer Fighter with heavy armor and 17 strength could only make a 6-foot jump with a DC 14. There was no reason for this rule. This is the best one. No short rests. None. He said they were too OP and unfair to the DM. If an ability or resource came back at short rest, they just came back during a long rest. This made some classes or abilities almost completely useless. If walking in difficult terrain, you had to make an acrobatics check for every 5 feet you moved, with the DC going up every 5 feet you walked. You could only play as human, dwarf, halfling, or elf, and no dark elves or wood elves. Those were OP. Also, no dark vision allowed. You'll never guess why. It's OP. He made a custom standard array for starting sets. 14, 12, 12, 10, 10, and 8. Here are some tame ones, but I'm still not a fan, but these are fairly normal. Encumbrance. Ew. Also, we couldn't ignore coin weight. XP. Split between the party. So if we adventures with NPCs, they get XP too. And XP was watered down so we wouldn't get strong too fast. There are plenty more, but those were the real. Keep these in mind for the future. Now I'm going to stop here because I'm not going to remember this by the end of the video, but I'm not going to go through each one and explain why this is a bad idea. None of these make it realistic whatsoever. Having to do constant DC checks isn't realism, in my opinion. Well, they said they wanted to make it gritty and realistic. It turns out that there's no realism and it's all gritty. And by gritty, super grindy. These spells are horrible. Also, like I said in my realism video, I think I said this, but adding this many custom rules is going to be a pain to remember every single one. D&D 5e is not a complex system, but it still has quite a fair amount of rules to remember. So whenever you go and add a bunch of new rules that you have to remember super specifically, and this wasn't even all of them, it becomes extremely bogged down. Every time you want to do something, you have to, hold on, let me check the paragraph of rules to make sure they haven't changed this at all. There are some that I want to comment on, so let's go over it. First of all, jumping is already a pain in the butt. Why would you ever mess with it? You would want to make it simpler, in fact, because having to do the calculations and all that for the DC already is already a pain in the butt, so leave that alone. I said I wasn't going to go over each one, but I can't help it. Spells costing gold? Stupid. Always requiring material components? That's why we have spell focus. If you're going to be super gritty, require them to have a hand free to use gestures and components. If you want to make it, I guess, realistic or gritty. That's already a pain in the butt to have to keep a hand open. You got dual wielding and two-handed weapons for your spell casting. You know, paladins, you know, they use great swords. Well, now they have to use one-handed weapons if they want to cast spells. I mean, unless they take warcaster. So if you wanted to make it that gritty, you can go ahead and do that. Resting now costs gold. I mean, isn't that just standard in travel stuff? I mean, changing the amount of healing you get per gold is stupid, but I mean, resting already took money whenever you stop at a tavern. This is stupid. No short rest. That's stupid. I don't think I need to explain why, but all the fighter abilities, warlock spell slots. I think paladins have some stuff with short rest. Every class has some type of resource that they usually get back with a short rest. So not every class, but most classes do, and the classes that do need a short rest tend to need them more often. For example, warlocks, they only get 2 spell slots, so you know, they need those short rests, and you can always do it Baldur's Gate style if you don't want them to, I guess, abuse the short rest, but you are the DM, so you can just say no X amount of short rests a day. Like I was saying, Baldur's Gate, 2 short rests a day makes plenty of sense. Then you have to take a long rest. That way they can't just encounter short rest, encounter and short rest. That's more up to you. And then of course everything else. No dark vision, no booming blade, the really crappy standard array. Are you sure this guy is a fan of high fantasies? This sounds like low fantasy mumbo jumbo, or dark fantasy, or blade and sorcery, you know, Conan type stuff, if you wanted to go that route. So this guy should have just played Morkborg, baby. Let's get back to the story. Now, upon seeing these rules, I had some PTSD adjacent reaction, remembering my own attempt at this many years back. I told the DM, Alvin, that these rules seem extremely harsh and seem to only impact the players. There's no positive for the player here. He brushed it aside and said, "You won't even try it? Wow, dude. Not every game has to be perfect high fantasy and run raw." I told him I so disagree with the rules, but I like the crew and his DM style, so I'll stick around. Naturally, at character creation, we didn't have a single caster. How could we? 10 GP a spell level was crazy for any caster that wasn't a wealthy paladin, maybe. We ended up making a halfling rogue, Evan making a dwarf fighter, and Isaac making a human monk. We were all very excited and all made our characters be blood brothers from the same orphanage. It was at this point that Alvin told me the halflings were viewed as slaves in this world. This should have been strike 3 for warning signs, but I ignored him. I asked for clarification, hoping he meant that a lot of them happened to be enslaved, but it wasn't the norm. He said no, halflings are slave race. They're so ingrained into their culture that they actually like being slaves, and most don't want to be free. Now I saw the flags. I saw them waving like crazy. But I really like playing with small parties, and these guys were so cool. So I asked if I had to be a slave, and he said no. But people will view you as lesser and believe you're below them. I had the idea of making a story arc where he would break their chains and stop slavery, and I thought maybe he would lead me in that direction, so I decided to continue. Fast forward a few sessions, and we are all having a blast. He puts in lots of works on his battle maps and NPC interactions. The players are role-playing and even arguing in character. Things started to come apart here. I expressed to the DM I never played a rogue before and was so scared I would be useless in combat. He assured me I wouldn't. In the first 15 combats we had, I counted, every enemy but 2 were resistant or even immune to piercing damage, my only weapon damage type. Every enemy was proficient in perception and saw me hiding. We constantly fought in magical darkness. Enemies had spells that they didn't pay the cost because they were throwaway enemies who always had tons of gold for their spells, but when we searched their body, we would only find an occasional silver. Now I'm a firm believer that D&D is a role-playing game more than a combat game. So though I was frustrated at times, I was still having fun. That is very true. It is definitely a role-playing game over a combat game because most combats tend to be slow and clunky. No matter what rules you add to them, that's just how it turns out. I mean, it's half combat, half role-playing, and it's just up to the DM of the campaign themselves. And I mean, everyone should get together and decide what kind of campaign they want. Do they want a heavy combat campaign, or do they want a heavy role-play campaign, or do they want a good mixture of both? These are things to talk about with your group before you decide to start a campaign. Well, you know, unless you know them. Months passed and we eventually hit level 4. We all take feats and I take Sulker, which gives me blind sight and close range. The DM yanks that away and gives me limited dark vision instead, but justified it with, be lucky, you're the only player with dark vision. You did take a feat for it after all. No, I didn't. I took a feat for blind sight, but again, I didn't quit. Throughout this game, I would point out how a certain rule that he came up with, on the spot sometimes, ruins the funds for players. The other players would agree, but the DM would just say, tough luck, find another game if you hate it. It was getting a bit much. Now around this time, I had a Blades in the Dark game I wanted to run, so I invited the guys to it and we had a session 0. Very fun, but Alvin several times were argued that he can do a certain thing because it's what I built my character around. It's not that I would stonewall him, he would just argue that he should succeed after failing a dice roll to attempt the very thing he wanted to achieve. Sorry dude, it's a dice game. The dice will determine if you win or fail when attempting action rolls. The following week in Alvin's games, we are fighting harpies. Due to a lot of circumstances, my character had a hand they couldn't use, so they couldn't use a crossbow to shoot at them in the sky. So my guy is practically useless. Regardless, I try and swipe at them when they get close. I even hand my crossbow to Evan's character so he could reload it in between rounds. We get very close to death in this combat and try to find somewhere to rest. It was at this time he made up a new rule saying, oh, you have to make survival rolls to determine the quality of rest. When we are beaten and battered, willing to pay 10 GP each out of our pathetic coffers just to heal. I told him that this is blatantly just so we have a harder time. There is no fun introduced here. We never had to make a survival roll for resting before, and only saying it now because we are closest to death than we have ever been before. This was the end of the session, so we decided to end there. I thought I was a little harsh, so I messaged him afterwards saying, I don't hate your game or anything. I just feel the need to give feedback on aspects that affect me, the player. I like you, and I really like your DM stuff. He didn't respond that night, so I went to bed. I woke up to a text from him saying, in way more words, you're relieved of duty, soldier. You don't like my game, and it's obvious you don't want to keep playing. If you're not feeling petty, I'm looking forward to playing in your game later this week. I was livid. This wasn't just an injection from a D&D group. I was being dumped by a friend. I asked if this was a bit or if he was serious, and he nonchalantly said, no, LOL. If this was a joke, I wouldn't have removed you from the server and roll 20. Word for word, by the way. I checked, and he was right. I was kicked from both. I had months of work and stories dumped into the Discord server at Roll20. I messaged Evan and Isaac, and they had no idea. Alvin didn't talk to them at all. I began to argue a bit with him, saying this was not funny and the other guys are not in support of this. He said, and I quote from the Discord message, there are ways to levy constructive criticism that are definitely not, that's dumb. Why would you do it like that? And even though you keep messaging me, I'm having tons of fun. When we play, it doesn't really feel that way for me. And to be honest with you, me having fun is more important than everyone else having fun. because I'm the one who puts in the most work for the game, and when we're playing together and these issues come up, it's not fun for me. So I gotta make a change, and I have the right to do that. The nerve of this DM, holy moly, this is crazy. The nerve of this guy. Let's finish the story. Now, I never said that rule is dumb, but if you're perceptive, you'll notice the line when he said, his fun is more important than our fun. I literally laughed out loud while reading that, realizing I may be dodging a bullet. I messaged the other guys about it and showed them the text. They were very surprised too. Eventually, the game fell apart because the other guys agreed to stop playing without me. Instead of saying their goodbyes, Alvin booted them both out of the server, and according to Isaac, is cleaning out to do it all over again with a new group. Isaac says he's not going to play with Alvin ever again and is reassessing their friendship. Evan said that it makes him very sad and not want to play another TTRPG anytime soon. I assured him that more games end well rather than not. I'm so upset about the whole ordeal. I lost a whole friend group, not just a D&D group. I messaged Alvin today to try and patch some holes and get some closure. I said, I'm unsure of what I should say. I feel I have lots to say, but can't word it right. As I began to type my message, he blocked immediately and suddenly. I messaged Isaac about it, who was currently in a public Discord call with Alvin, and he said that Alvin claimed I was crashing out and sending tons of messages. So here I am, deciding to log it all for everyone else to see. Alvin, if you see this, I have a lot of negative feelings towards you, but I don't want anything less than good stuff for your life. I hope you can grow. And with that, none truer words could be said. Even though they're probably not a good person. I won't say they're a bad person, but you know, saying your fun is more important than everyone else just because you put in a lot of time. Hey, you agreed to it. You didn't have to be the DM. Other people can be the DM. Even so, it's you who wants to put in the work. Like I said in the beginning, all my friends and I want to be DMs for our little group. So each one of us puts into a lot of work into the campaigns. Or I know I do. I'm not sure about them. They might just have funny little notes with goblins and top hats on them. I'm just kidding. Each person has put a lot of time into the campaign. Even if they don't write it down, they put a lot of thought behind the story. And we even reach out to each other for help with the campaign going forward because it's collaborative storytelling. Most TTRPGs are about coming together as a group to tell a cohesive story, or not even cohesive, just for everyone to have fun. Why should one person have fun in a group of 4 people? That just doesn't make sense. And then they have the audacity to say their fun is getting ruined when they're ruining everyone else's fun. It sounds like their fun is just making everyone else have a hard time in the game. What kind of fun is that? What a douchebag. My fun is more important than everyone else. Well, maybe don't put as much work into it. Maybe don't be a DM if you're going to act like that. You were already in another game, and in that game, you were also complaining about how they should have done stuff correctly, at least from OP's words. So we don't know the full extent, we know one side, but I'm assuming OP is a trustworthy fellow. They wouldn't lie to us, would they? No one lies on the internet, guys. Everything is real and truthful. There is no subjections or whatever. Regardless, the flags were there, and the OP could have left at any time, but again, not everyone has, what is it, blind foresight's 2020 or whatever. Even in the moment, they're playing with a group of friends, and it can be really hard to leave a group of friends. But again, if you're not having fun, if you're seeing this many red flags, then you should just leave. Because, once again, it's better to play no TTRPG than it is to play a really crappy TTRPG with realistic and gritty rules. So guys, if you're not having fun, let everyone else know. Don't prioritize your fun over others people's just because you put in a lot of work. They also put in work into the characters, although it's nowhere near the work people put into making a campaign from scratch. But again, they put in the time to be there. You should respect everyone's time. They take time out of their busy week schedule to be there, to play and have fun. So everyone in the group should be having fun. Why wouldn't you want people to have fun in your campaign? Do you just enjoy watching people suffer or something? So, guys, be good people. Be good gobs. Okay? Just make sure everyone's having fun. Make sure everyone's comfortable. At the end of the day, it's just a game. Talk it out. Talk with your group. Talk with people. Talk, when in doubt, just talk it out. Have your session zeros. All of that. I say the same thing almost every single time, but I think it needs to be reiterated for people to talk it out, because I don't think a lot of people do. So, that is all the advice I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed my reading of these stories. And if you want to see more, well, subscribe. I do them every other week or maybe once a week. Depends on just how I am feeling. Like I usually say, I don't want to bog the channel down with RPG horror stories, but they do pretty well. And a lot of people like them. And I like reading them. Not sometimes. Sometimes they're awful. But for the most part, they are really fun to read. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You know, like, subscribe, comment, blah, blah, blah. My social media's in the description. All that general outro stuff. And I hope you gobs have a lap of a day. May your adventures be free of horrible people.